state starting next year. By realigning the low-level offenders to the county jail systems, those low-level offenders are the same ones that qualify to serve in our inmate fire crews. CAL FIRE is projecting the possibility that we could lose up to 90 of the 190 or so fire crews that we currently have because of this realignment. There are negotiations underway to work with CDCR and local government to allow those inmates to come back into the CDCR inmate program with CAL FIRE. But to my knowledge, of the 58 counties, none of them have agreed to the concept of sending their county inmates back into the state program for a variety of reasons. What this bill proposes simply is to allow, not to require, but to allow CAL FIRE to enter into contracts directly with local county corrections officials, and which is generally already allowed under current law for CAL FIRE to do contracting. What's specifically stated in this bill, and also will be amended into the bill, but what's specifically stated is that the inmates will remain under the county health care requirements and not the state level health care requirements. That's a dramatic impact, an improvement for the counties so that they can afford to contract over to CAL FIRE for their inmate crews. The other amendment that we are taking so that the California professional firefighters will remove their opposition is that this program will be confined to the counties where CAL FIRE already does their contracting, so that you don't have CAL FIRE trying to come in and compete with other existing county fire crew programs that are already in place. So with that, Mr. Chair, that's kind of a brief summary of what we have.
Sure. Thank you very much. And witnesses in support, our practice is 2 witnesses, 2 minutes.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Paul Smith with the Regional Council of Rural Counties. We represent 31 of the state's rural counties and boards of supervisors that govern those counties. Many of the fire camps are hosted in RCRC counties, the rural counties I just mentioned. So we have a very keen interest in this discussion. Let me first suggest and say that our organization's first priority is to maintain the status quo with respect to having a CDCR-led process of inmates coming out of county facilities into CDCR for training and initial placement, and then spun out to the various CAL FIRE CDCR operated fire camps. Unfortunately, where things have been going over the last several months with respect to trying to hammer out a good MOU and a contract that's equitable between CAL FIRE, CDCR, and counties, we are not there yet, as Mr. Jeffries alluded to. So we are at a point where we have to explore other options, and hence our reason for supporting Mr. Jeffries' bill. Again, it is our hope in working with other county partners, the Sheriff's Association, CSAC, and others, that we can come to agreement to preserve the status quo and make sure that we have a healthy fire crew program, particularly for the next fire season. We see this bill as a way to solidify the option of contracting, seeing other options on the table, and therefore we strongly urge the committee to move forward with this legislation.
Thank you very much, sir. Next witness in support.
Good morning. Dorothy Holzman with the League of California Cities. In addition to Paul's comments, I'll just share that whether you're rural or urban, these fire crews are incredibly important to our suppression and prevention efforts, and we think this measure is the right way to move forward to ensure that the inmate fire crews can continue to be that vital resource for our local fire service. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other witnesses in support?
Good morning. Curtis Hill on behalf of the State Sheriff's Association. We continue to work with CDCR in regards to not only the fire camp, the original contract, but also the contracting back for an inmate going back into a bed space within the system. So those contracts are not finalized yet. We do have ongoing issues with the fire camp side of that. However, with this bill, we support it. We understand and recognize the #1 priority in California is the public safety of the communities and the fire safety out there across the state. So we appreciate this bill and support it.
Thank you. Any witnesses in opposition?
Thank you, Mr Chairman, members of the committee. Caroline Godkin, Deputy Director for Legislation at CAL FIRE. We don't actually have a formal position on this bill yet, but we do have some concerns that we have shared with the author. In particular, there are some programmatic implications were this bill to be implemented. So, for example, CAL FIRE currently owns the camps, but a lot of the equipment and the facility is operated by CDCR. So, for example, the kitchens and the laundry. It's unclear under this who the custodial agency would be and who would take over the operation of those facilities, and there could be a significant cost there. In addition, we have a long history of working with CDCR in the inmate selection statewide for the fire camps, and CDCR bring the resources to be able to ensure consistency for medical screening, criminal history, gang affiliations statewide. And again, it's unclear under the implementation of this bill how that would be consistently done statewide. We would like to note that we do continue to work with our partners in the administration and particularly CDCR as we move forward, and also local law enforcement and the counties as the implications of AB 109 play out.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Christy Baumer representing the California Professional Firefighters. We registered our opposition to this bill. We have met with the author. He's agreed to accept amendments to protect the 10 fire camps operating in LA County. They are county fire department operated camps with CDCR, which now they are in negotiations with the county sheriff to take over the security services. So we remove our opposition.
All right, thank you. Are there any other witnesses in opposition? What a tangled web we weave. Any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is going to be needed not only for our fire crew or fires that we're going to have here in California over and over, but also, the help with the local counties to figure out where they're going to put some of their inmates with the overcrowding that they do have. And I just want to make sure I'm clear. There's no mandates in here. So all the concerns that the different agencies have, if they don't enter into a contract successfully, whatever they don't agree to, then this doesn't have any mandates on this.
That's correct. This is just enabling language to allow CAL FIRE to do something that they currently don't do today. They certainly don't have to do this if they desire not to. We've tried not to utilize this bill to micromanage each and every individual facility and who operates and owns what. We believe that that's CAL FIRE's responsibility in any potential contract that they might enter into with an individual county as to who specifically would own or operate different facilities within a facility. The bill we just can't begin to imagine what we might be looking at 2 years or 5 years down the road as this program evolves to have a working relationship between CAL FIRE and local government correction facilities. You could have fire camps that are based solely in a county facility and not in a former state facility. It could be in a former state facility that eventually is determined to be surplus and not needed because of the loss of the number of inmates. All these are options that we can't even imagine might occur over the next couple of years.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move the bill.
All right. The bill's been moved and seconded. Mr. Jeffries, I'll take that as your close. I'm delighted that the opposition's been removed, and between now and appropriations, I'm sure things will work out for you. So recommend an aye vote, and if we could have a roll call, please.
Amiano?
Aye.
Amiano, aye. Knight?
Aye.
Knight, aye. Cedillo? Cedillo, aye. Hagman?
Aye.
Hagman, aye. Mitchell? Skinner? Bill's out.
The bill is out.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Cook.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Okay. Every year, an estimated 800,000 children are reporting missing, more than 105,000 in California alone. This equates to more than 2,000 children each day. In perhaps the worst cases, those involving child abduction by sex offenders, the outcome is often tragic. This is a clear indication that we need better tools to help law enforcement in dealing with this problem. AB 1695 will help quickly identify certain sexual offenders, which will assist law enforcement in keeping children safe. Although information on sexual offenders is available through the Megan's Law database, It is often of little use in real-world situations. Requires access to the internet and time to locate a specific individual on the database. AB 1695 will require sex offenders who target children under the age of 14 or who are classified as sexually violent to carry some form of state issues identification when they are in public. This will make it much easier to identify sex offenders who are in places such as schools and parks. Does not require any type of identifiable mark to be placed on the ID stating they are a sex offender or have been convicted as a sexual offender, and it will not impose any cost on the state. The offense would result in a misdemeanor. This bill is kind of a result of bipartisan legislation that started with Pedro Nava. And there was an individual by the name of Mo Dubois that came to the two of us and talked to us. And similar bills have come before this committee and passed that were related to the tragic circumstances of his daughter, who was actually stalked in the San Diego area, raped, and then killed. There was a similar bill, Chelsea's Law, that affected another young girl in the San Diego area that Assemblyman Fletcher ran, I want to say last year or the year before. This is a continuation of this. I know this is probably going to be a very difficult bill because it is about the individual rights of somebody. But it specifically is in regards to those individuals that have had a proven history of being sexually violent and of course with children under 14. Any form of state ID would suffice. This was one time it was going through transportation. There was a big issue that you would target, or it would almost the argument was made. This is something like something out of a Nathaniel Hawthorne movie with the symbolic A and things like that. That this bill has corrected that. So we're running this bill. We have support from different organizations. As I said, Mr. Dubois was the one who had contacted this, and this is a continuation of his efforts to remember his daughter and hopefully not have similar tragedies happen again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any witnesses in support?
Curtis Hill on behalf of the California Probation, Parole, and Corrections Association. We support this bill, feel it would be good for Californians.
Thank you, sir. Any further witnesses? Any witnesses in opposition? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. Francisco Lovaco on behalf of the American Civil Liberties Union. We respectfully oppose the legislation. Californians are not required, nor should they ever be required, regardless of your they have a prior condition to carry ID with themselves at all times. In fact, as your analysis very cogently points out, it is presumptively unconstitutional under both California and U.S. Constitution. That said, it recognized that it might be a good idea that you carry ID on you at all times, because if you are in fact lawfully stopped, if you don't have ID, you may be subject to potential custodial arrest. But that said, this bill makes it a crime simply to carry ID, and we think that is unconstitutional. Thank you.
Liberty Sanchez on behalf of the California Public Defenders Association. We're also in opposition to this measure. for a few reasons. One of which is since the passage of Jessica's Law, there's been a dramatic skyrocket in the number of registrants who are transient. 29% of registrants are now transient. There's no guarantee that an individual, upon release from jail or prison, would actually have an ID. So until such time as he secures that ID, he would actually be in violation of this law if it passed. As the analysis points out, there's no definition within the bill of what a domicile is. So for those who do have a domicile, are they in violation anytime they leave? What is the definition of that? What happens to the large percentage of individuals who have no domicile when they, go to a facility to take a shower or do anything that any of us do when we leave our ID for a moment? And more importantly, I think the question is, post all of the statutory changes and initiative changes that we've had in recent years that have implemented a wide swath of registration requirements and penalties for failure to comply with those registration requirements on 290 registrants. The question is, would this bill in any way further the safety of the public? And because we see a direct correlation between increases to registration requirements and folks failing to register, I think the answer to that is no. For those reasons, we are opposed to this bill.
Okay, last witness.
Ignacio Hernandez on behalf of the California Attorneys for Criminal Justice Statewide Association of Criminal Defense Attorneys. We're also opposed. Let me just point out this will also have impact on individuals who are not registered sex offenders. This will now give law enforcement the only tool as a pretext for a stopper to ask you whether or not you have identification. If you happen not to have identification on you, police will be able to hold you. It's happened to me. I didn't look like I fit in a certain neighborhood, and I had law enforcement come up to me, I'm shocked, right, and ask me for my identification. I didn't have it on me, and I was walking. I didn't need to have my driver's license with me. This would give law enforcement a legal tool to stop me, to hold me, and take me in to find out if I'm a registered sex offender. And so it has broad implications in terms of pretextual questioning and stopping, and that's why we have concerns over this bill.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any other witnesses in opposition? All right, seeing none, committee members.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Colonel, let me ask you a couple of things. Sex offenders are required by law to wear GPS for a certain length of time they get released. Is that being accomplished right now?
To the best of my knowledge, it is.
For all our...
Oh, do you mean are they complying with that? I don't have the data. I suspect many of them are not.
Yeah. It doesn't apply to the whole population, but I know that many jurisdictions lack the resources to put the GPS monitoring.
It's very expensive. By the way, there's no cost associated with this bill.
Yeah, and then the couple examples that the opposition brought up, this being pulled over and asked for ID. Generally speaking, I thought it was a requirement for law enforcement to have some kind of probable cause to start questioning someone anyway, and that would still be apparent. Even if your bill passes and someone carries their ID, it doesn't mean that they have some kind of target on them saying, well, pull me over and start questioning me.
Well, the issue of probable cause is very, very important. I saw some of the questions there. There was one about a homeless person or somebody taking a shower, and, we can make arguments either way. I know personal experiences where I was medevaced in a combat situation and had my wallet blown off, and I guess I probably could have been arrested in the hospital for impersonating an officer, I guess, after I came out of but there's hypothetical situations. The genesis of this bill, or behind the bill, is talk about situations where, and this is the feedback we get from law enforcement, that time period immediately after, and I'm addressing where an offense is committed, where there's that window that if you don't identify a sexual predator that has committed an offense, particularly a serial one, that they would certainly be interested in those areas, playgrounds, schools, things like that, where they would want to identify somebody or find out their history and then see where the investigation goes any further. If there was no ID obviously it would be a misdemeanor. It depends on where the rest of the investigation goes. I heard the arguments here, and I know there are other instances under the Patriot Act or in the past history where, suspected terrorists, and you could go down that road, and we could argue that. The measure, I think, is clear-cut. If you feel this is an intrusion on civil rights, it's a pretty easy vote. If you feel this bill gives law enforcement an additional weapon to at least question those individuals or list them as a suspect because they have had a history of a conviction related to this type of crime and did not have an ID which is easily obtainable at the motor vehicle office, then the investigation could continue.
All right, sir. Thank you. All right, committee members? The motion to move? All right, there's a second. Colonel, I much appreciate your effort here, and these are very thorny issues, and I think the committee members have heard me before, but I do want to say the last thing anybody wants to do is dishonor Mr. Dubois or in any way indicate any kind of approbation for any kind of behavior. I think you will agree that we're all honorable enough to not want to do that and at the same time disagree. I have very serious concerns here about the constitutionality. There are groups of people who it's very unpleasant to have to represent or to say you need to get a fair shake. When you look at the horror of many of the crimes that have been committed. However, I feel that as chair, as a father, as a grandfather, I need to step back from my visceral and look at this as not a simplistic issue. And actually votes like this are not that easy because we're all grappling with, how the moral lens that we look at these issues with. So it is with all due respect that I am recommending a no vote on this, and I certainly do commend you for the effort, and I'm hoping that someday we won't have such black and white opposition and that we really will find a common ground that will be protective of all of our daughters and our kids and our families, and at the same time, honor the Constitution. And so if we could have a roll call, please.
Amiano?
No.
Amiano, no. Knight? Knight, aye. Cedillo? No. Cedillo, no. Hagman? Hagman, aye. Mitchell? No. Mitchell, no. Skinner? No. Skinner, no.
Thank you.
2-4. Thank you, Colonel. It fails. No, yeah, no, I don't know. We'll hear from his office.
We're done, and people can add on.
All right, we are through with the agenda, but people can add on. And I will adjourn.